So, yeah, I think the thing that has always been celebrated about the show is that the character's sexuality has always been in the background. It's not the main focus of the show. And so if someone dies, it's just because they have to die in the plot of the story. And it's not, you know, because, oh, the queer story is done now and we're done with that.
Yeah. Well, almost all the characters are gay. It's not like, oh, the token lesbian's dying. It's just like, oh, a character.
Yeah.
But again, they do have the tendency to come back. As we now know, Maddie's back too. I mean, it's very much the same, but if not just larger and even more supportive now, which is such a gift. And I think what I've learned about the fandom is that they needed representation so much. Like, they were just so desperate for positive representation. And it was always important to me, but it's become even more important to me, and they've taught me a lot. Because I didn't realize how much they truly needed it, so I just feel really lucky that I get to play this character, and it's really neat for me to also be a voice for their community. I mean, I identify as pansexual, so for me, even just being a role model for bi and pan girls who, like, you're like, hey, we did it. Yeah, I mean, who don't always have a voice either, is just been such a gift.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the show has grown so much over 2 years, and we've grown so much over 2 years. It's cool to see the audience growing with us as well. Right. And so I think, especially like, there's so many new things in season 3, and I think everyone's really absorbing it well. And yeah, it's been a cool journey.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there definitely are. It changes. I mean, we get rewrites even up until, you know, the day before sometimes, the day before we shoot. But something we were really lucky to have this season is the producers and writer really trusted us that we knew our characters. So we had a little bit more leeway to say, you know, I don't know that Carmilla would say that, or hey, can we add this like extra little moment between Baurman and Carmilla? Because, you know, there were a couple things where we wanted to have a bit more of a back and forth, and we wanted to ad-lib a little bit, so in times when they're like bickering or fighting, that was Elise and I kind of ad-libbing a little bit. But I mean, the writing's so fantastic, so it was really just adding a little bit more, these little like looks and moments that, you know, almost can't be scripted in a way, but totally. We were just really lucky that they allowed us to do that, because I think we were very shy in the first 2 seasons about, you know, really sticking to the script, and
I think, you know, when things are changing and moving at such a rapid pace, you really have to be willing to let go and go with the flow of things. And that's something I've definitely been learning through this process of filming, is that, you know, you come in with ideas, and you come in with all of your work done, and then you just sort of like let things unfold the way that they will. And that changes from moment to moment, and luckily Natasha and I have such great chemistry and such like a great working relationship that like some really beautiful moments in the season were born just like in the moment, which I love. That's the best as an actor. So yeah, I think really letting go has been an important lesson for me, especially when we film so quickly. Like, you're done the scene, good, we got the take. Not perfect, moving on. All right, like, let's get to the next one.
Letting go is a big one. We definitely learned to just move on and push forward, because we do shoot it so quickly. And the funny thing is, we just thought that that's how well, when we've shot season 1, we mostly came from theater. So we sort of said, oh, this is, I guess, just the way things are done. And then now that we've done more film and television,
this is insane.
Oh, this is a crazy shoot schedule. So
and learning to trust as well.
Yeah. Okay. I think Pam from True Blood.
Great word.
Yeah, I think they'd have a really fun time.
Hilarious.
Together. Who did you think?
I was thinking like kind of Pam, but also Lestat. Like, I could totally see you like you two like philosophizing together, just like drinking. But you definitely outdrink him though.
Yeah. write. I am most creative at really weird hours, like 3 a.m. So I usually write things in the middle of the night. Yeah.
Good answer.
I do love skinny dipping in the dark when it is pitch black and you are in a lake and all you can see is the stars and like there's no difference between the sky and the water.
Sounds like my nightmare.
I was gonna say,
That
sounds
is like
awful.
a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Awful. I will be sitting on the dock just being like, please don't die.
You'll
Elise.
be like writing and I'll just be like.
I did that this summer, and I was like, no, never again. I don't know what's in here. Not doing it. Not doing it.
Monsters.
Yeah, everything.
It's such a blur.
I know.
We shoot it so quickly. We're always like, what happened in every episode?
What did we do?
I have no idea. Gosh.
I mean, I think like episode 36 in season 1 was pretty great. Like the moment where they finally sort of like, after all that build up during season 1, when they finally let their guard down and let each other in, like to me that's a huge part of what this web series is the love story between the two, as an underlying thing during all these other events that are happening and taking place. But that was such a beautiful moment. I really liked that one.
Yeah, and it was kind of like built up, and I think we were a bit nervous, but it was one of the last things we shot, and that was really great. And then for season 2, I can't remember what episode it is, but I really like the moments where Laura and Carmilla are sort of away from the camera and having their own sort of private moments on the couch. I think I really liked those too.
Yeah, those were definitely.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff where it's like a little bit less, where the characters are aware of the camera, and when it's more private moments, those I like a lot more. I think personally, I mean, I can't predict the future, and I didn't necessarily know, but I always did have some weird feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. And I think part of that is that as an actor, you always just have to have faith that things are going to work out. And I think people always kind of want to have that feeling that, yes, that like, you know, a positive intention for what it is. I think sometimes people can get a bit blinded, and, you know, I don't think blind faith is a good thing. But there was always like a little tickle of something that I was like, I don't know, but I sensed good things for this show.
Yeah, I was familiar with Smoke Bomb Entertainment's work beforehand, and I knew that they had a great track record and that their shows were quite successful. It still surpassed my wildest dreams. Like, I didn't expect it to be as big as it is. I thought, oh, this is a great company. This is going to be a decent show. I read the breakdown, and from the moment I read the breakdown, I said, that's the part I want to play, that's the part I want to audition for, and I called my agent and I was like, please get me on an audition for this, because I just felt immediately connected to her from the second I read her description. But yeah, and in terms of like going to New York Comic Con, that I could have never imagined 2 years ago.
Right.
When we got the scripts, it was a surprise to us as well,
And we generally get all the scripts at once. Except in season 1, we filmed half of the season in 2 days, and didn't actually, when we filmed the first half of season 1, we didn't yet know how the season ended. So that was a bit of a surprise. But season 2 and season 3, we get all 36 episodes at once. But yeah, we don't really get any insider information.
No.
The actors are always like the last to know.
We're always gasping and screaming and texting each other in all caps as soon as we read the script. It's like, what?
Yeah. I like it that way.
Yeah, it's exciting. In terms of difficult scenes to shoot, though, the funniest thing is people expect us to say, like, you know, these big dramatic scenes, and when we're present, it's actually not the most difficult. I mean, it's very cathartic. The most difficult scenes to shoot are the simplest things you would never imagine. Literally, the most difficult thing for me to shoot in season 3 was dropping those damn glasses and stepping on them at the right time. That was the hardest thing. Spencer made me do it like 10 times. Comedic timing and physical comedy has to be so precise, and those montage scenes are always the hardest thing to shoot. It's just like, sometimes just like breathing or walking is the most difficult thing to do.
Do you get to rehearse at any, like?
Like, we rehearse it once right on the
right
set,
before.
like right before you shoot it.
And sometimes we shoot the rehearsal.
Yeah.
So if
And then
we're-
they're
if
like,
we're
"That's not
feeling
bad,
brave,
we're keeping
like,
it." Yeah.
We're like, they're like, shoot the rehearsal, and we're like, yeah.
Okay. And sometimes
It goes horribly, sometimes it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always find the little montage scenes especially difficult.
Yeah.
Like that one where like the book needed to drop on your head, and we had
Yeah.
like no time, and we're like, okay, let's just like bang this out, and then it like takes forever.
Yeah, because someone has bad aim
Yeah.
or a duck away.
You're like, I don't like any books.
Yeah. Or prop books.
Yeah.
It still kind of hurt, but anyway.
All of them.
All of them.
Everyone's
It's a very good diplomatic answer. Yeah, I love playing off all of them. And I love watching Annie and Sophia work together. Yeah, like when we're not working with them. Yeah. Watching those episodes with them together recently that just dropped, we were like, wow, these are two like womanly like powerhouses. They're so fun to watch.
Like dripping in talent.
Yeah.
So good. And there's more to come.
Yeah.
They're so good. I mean, it's so incredible. Like it is such a stacked cast, and it's pretty incredible to get a group of people that are all so talented and diverse and wonderful as we have.
Yeah. They're all
And
great to work with for different reasons.
yeah, like everyone like brings something so unique and new to the set, which I think is awesome. I did get the chance this year to work with a new actor, Enrico Colatoni, who played my dad, and like sometimes you just click with an actor for no reason, and him and I just had an instant connection, and I loved working with him so much. And I think one of the reasons that I loved working with him is because he was such fresh blood to the set, and we film in such an untraditional way, and some of the takes are long takes, and what he would like, he just was so present and in it that even when things were going wrong, and he was like, where am I? I'm in like a magical library, like what's going on? He was just like so present, would stay in character, and some of the episodes where those little things are going wrong that we can probably tell that nobody else would ever know, but there's just like something that comes alive then because it's so real. Because like one time in an episode he didn't hear something that Natasha said, and so he's like, sorry, what did you say? And then she repeated, and that happens in real life. And I love seeing that on television because so often we present such like a filtered version of what goes down in real life. And in real life, you don't hear people, and you trip on things, and you stutter, and you mess up your words. And that's so much more interesting to watch for me. Yeah, so I love working.
Was there a chemistry read with him, or they just like cast him?
No, I had I wasn't supposed to meet him until the morning of when we first shot, but I texted him or I messaged him and I said, hey, would you mind coming to set and just running lines with me? It was after our first 12-hour day, and I just really wanted to meet him, and he was so kind and generous enough to come and meet me the night before. And we didn't even end up running lines, we just ended up talking and kind of running lines.
I wouldn't say that we were best friends right away, but I'd say there was a very palpable chemistry right away. Like it took us a while to get to know each other because our work schedule was so crazy. We didn't really get to hang out on a personal level until much later. But for me personally, from the second we auditioned together, like both of us auditioned with several different Lauras and Carmillas. I think I auditioned with about like 8 different Lauras.
Wow, I don't think I have.
Yeah, like there were a lot, and maybe it felt like that anyway. There were a lot, and I remember Steph sort of asked me who I liked the best, and I just was like, yeah, something felt really great about her. I remember Steph texted me a photo of us together from the screen, and she was like, this is like what we're thinking, and I was like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had never met each other before the chemistry read. We didn't have any initial auditions together. And it's true, like there was something very unique about our chemistry as soon as we read together that I think we both felt for sure. And like Natasha said, it was hard to like we were sort of like thrown into this crazy schedule right away that we didn't actually really have a chance to hang out a lot in season 1.
No.
But I feel like it kind of worked out nicely that we got to know each other personally as the characters got to know each other. Because I don't think Laura and Carmilla really know each other in season 1. Like they're sort of like very, you know, you said it really well in an interview a while ago. You said that they're infatuated with each other in season 1. And then
they do fall in love. I do believe that they fall in love, absolutely.
But it is more
the
of an
initial
innocent love. Like it's like a chemistry and that, and then they actually get to know each other more in season 2 and season 3, and that's when we started kind of like getting to know each other on a deeper level as well. So it worked out really like well in that sense.
I don't even have enough time to answer that question. This show has completely changed my life. And when fans say, you know, this show saved me, I'm saying, or your work saves me, I'm like, you have no idea how much it's saved me and helped me as well. So every single thing we do is a learning experience. I think it's been a really interesting introduction to being in the public eye, because we were very thrust into that, but on a small level at the same time, because it is a web series. So we've had a lot of practice with what it means to be an actor who is known, and then even on a personal level, like Elise and I have learned so much from each other, and I think it's just been. I never take for granted how lucky I am, because I've made so many lifelong friends in both the cast and the crew, and I just like don't even have enough time to answer that. It's like everything, like I just
Oh man, I'm on the same page. I feel the same way. Like there's been so many life lessons that I've learned through this show, and I mean, this is such a time of growth for any human in their 20s. Especially kind of at an accelerated pace, being thrown into something where, you know, you're put in the public eye for the first time, and it's a show where all these lessons are being learned. And I think a big thing for me is that, you know, that attention can be pretty seductive, and you want to start kind of like getting it at any cost then. And I think for me, like, being the lead on a show was something that I always wanted, and then I got it and I realized it didn't actually make me happy in the way that I thought it would, and fulfilled in the way that I thought it would. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was realizing that it's never about like the end result is never the satisfying thing. The work up until that point is the satisfying thing, and so, you know, it wasn't like the attention that made me satisfied. It was like the work that we get to do together is awesome. Yeah. And that we were like lucky enough to do it for 2 years. Yeah. So I think that's been the biggest takeaway for me too. And that from an acting perspective, something that I've been learning is that it's never about me. It is always about the story, and that's something that I especially learned season 3, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, as a show, we're very engaged. Like, part of the project is a project around representation, and so as we were, like, we probably would have been working to engage regardless of what had happened external to us, and certainly with it becoming a major topic of discussion around the barrier days, that's important.
And I wouldn't say pressure, it just means impetus to discuss, and I think it's great that it's come up in more mainstream things. I think for us, obviously, since we're more niche, and I'd say about half of the writing and story editing team is queer, it's like, for me, myself, as a queer woman, I want to write something. I want to produce something that I'm proud of and happy of myself. It doesn't mean, and I also have to reiterate, what seems to me as great representation will not be great representation to someone else. You know, some people are unhappy with certain aspects of the relationship, and therefore will say this representation doesn't work for me, and that's fine, because not one story will satisfy everyone. But in the bottom line, we want to make sure that it's healthy and satisfying and just respectful. I think that's
well, that we've put forward our best story, and our best story within the world and the representation that is there.
And we don't take it lightly. It's about respect and really discussing what are not only the implications in the story world, but also on a meta level. Like, what are you saying by this choice? What does it mean on top of the story?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I mean, certainly by the time you're in the third season, a lot of the things that you've done earlier dictate choices you're going to be making. I mean, the magical library was a sort of a running gag through season 1, and that meant that as we were coming into season 2 and 3, like pretty much by the time I was plotting out like the really serious arc of season 2, I knew they were gonna, because we'd already done one move, right? We moved from the dorm room into the dean's apartment, and if we'd done that move, it seemed like, well, we want to move again, and what's a really interesting place on the Silas campus that we could go in? The library was just, oh, that's amazing. So we'll definitely do that for that third piece. Originally, it was coming into the reading of the novella and having this experience of both. There's some really lovely prose, and the character of Carmilla, like in the way that she's like quoting Buffon and other things like that, she's fascinating. But it's also got this kind of like it's the 1870s, and it's got a really retrograde lens on what lesbian relationships and desires look like. So because I knew I wanted to retcon that made a lot of decisions about like what was going to happen with Laura and Carmilla. And then if we were going to have a murder mystery and Carmilla wasn't going to be the villain, I needed a lot of other suspects. So I needed a big space. So a lot of it is just practical. The university is great. But if they're going to be suspects, well then maybe it's an evil university. If it's going to be an evil university, then you start looking around at Sheridan Le Fanu's contemporaries and you think, well, you've got Lovecraft, and Lovecraft creates kind of a really interesting like life metaphor. Like if Buffy is running on the idea that high school is hell, it's really fun to like extend that and think, well, maybe university is like a Lovecraftian Byzantine experience where you're sort of like continually running into things that are not named for you, secret societies and other, etc. And that's generally how I tend to work, is like I'll tend to know what a character is going to want, and from that, from like whatever that character's first strong impulse is, a lot of the rest of the world will decide itself. Does that kinda?
Yeah.
Well, for season 2, like your first season runs really strongly on your protagonist. The second season, at least in terms of like my understanding of the theory of it, because this was the first time I'd written a second season or a sequel to anything, runs a lot on your antagonists. And I needed somebody who would be a good, like, both a foil for the dean, because you know the dean is coming back if you're doing a third season. And so that was basically, there was also, because what I do when I'm creating any character is I first go back to the novella and I see what I can troll. And there's just a quick reference
in the carriage.
to basically to a black character in the carriage, and it felt like, oh, this is great. Like, in addition to our project here to like give voices to queer characters, we can take this super marginalized and like refer to, like, you know,
refer to her as hideous. So we cast the most beautiful person ever.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it referred to her as hideous in like that awkward way that, like, you know how Shakespeare's like a jewel in an Ethiop's ear, and you're like, ugh, you were doing so well with the poetry, and now unfortunate, 15th century racism. So the same thing happened there, where I was just like, well, why don't we rescue that? And then so it became really important to give her like a very full voice, and thinking then of her in relationship to the dean and Carmilla.
She really was, in between them.
Yeah.
Just shedding light on Carmilla's past was one of my favorite parts of season 2, was seeing her.
Yeah. And the big sister dynamic, I think, does a lot, because when you think of Carmilla as worldly in some ways, the idea of somebody who's been, there for longer and has a sort of a different perspective on the length of their years. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just, we're really lucky to play with all these people. And also in season 2, we had access to a much wider pool of actors when we went union, so that was really wonderful.
Particularly in the writing room.
Because I'll be straight up, it's like we don't have enough diversity in the writers' room.
Yeah.
We're all white. I mean, I'm Arabic, but that still counts as white. So, yeah, I think there's definitely ways where we could have done better, but we're also constrained by time, budgets, etc.
You do have to push because there's, and sometimes like for myself, I'm like on board with the Equity in Theater initiative. So and in theater, like we're having these discussions a lot because I think it's very similar to
absolutely.
television
And there's
film.
it's also a question of who has the luxury to do this.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
Factory Theater also, their new season in Toronto is all playwrights of color. So that's really exciting because sometimes you'll see it represented in the cast, but not in the playwriting sphere. So that's really, really cool.
Well, and we are seeing changes in terms of like programming is a great place to start because like after I want to say like 5 to 10 years of pressure, you are starting to see theaters now saying we're going to commit to 50% female playwrights. We're going to commit to
Absolutely.
like Factory actually is amazing. But some of it also is about like expanding our networks because like theater and to a certain extent film are fairly insular communities, and so people go to who they know. And so if you don't have access to like a good, like somewhere where you're going to be able to find a good pool of diverse actors, and like the responsibility is on us
Absolutely.
to keep finding where those networks are. But that
And
I
not
think,
give up at a certain level if you don't find. Like I remember
Exactly, yeah.
for Maddie, Theo, and Mel, we put out a call for only actors of color. With black specifically for Maddie, and I remember some agents were like, "This one's kind of black." I'm like, "There's no kind of black. It's like black or you're not."
It's kind of both. I mean, one of the things that happens when, like, one of my main projects as a writer is basically first the creation of female protagonists who are afforded the same degree of psychological scope and the same degree of agency that we afford our male protagonists. So like male protagonists are allowed to be whatever they want to be, and the story is about like this particular guy and not about him explaining his guyness.
And they're allowed to make mistakes.
Exactly, they're allowed to make mistakes, they're allowed to do a lot of those things. Second to that is the creation of like a broad spectrum of female characters because we are not all the same woman, and I mean that's super obvious, and yet at the same time you get inundated a lot with like the ingenue who is the same. So that happens, and once you've done that, once you have different women, you know, just on the playing field, they start to form different relationships. Like basically, there's a lot of like male friendships on television that never get questioned just because there's a preponderance of male characters.
Right.
But yes, also I believe very firmly in female solidarity. Like I am very anti like sort of princess chosen one tropes because I feel like they're really actually quite negative for us, and they don't teach us that we are better in
We're
solidarity.
better together, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And then, you know, female and also different genders, being
Yes.
there and coming to their realization. And that's one of my favorite things about the show, actually. It's just seeing this breadth of female and otherwise gendered characters, and their solidarity. Laugh saying they've got to find theory and figure this out, and how.
Yeah, nothing's ever questioned, even when they mess up. They don't like question each other. It's just like, well, we're gonna step up and be there for them, like no matter what, which I think is great and much needed.
I mean,
Well, they question, but they do it
It's
anyway.
definitely there to be like, you guys suck.
And we need that too, because we're like, you know what,
Yeah.
she's right sometimes. So.
Yeah. Well, you want a certain amount of conflict, but like yes, conflict. Like I think I'm not a fan of cattiness.
Yeah.
And so when you generate characters, like I think frequently you'll just like self-edit for things where you're just like, that's cheap. That's not a good way of getting into this conflict. That's not like the meat of the problem. So why do that superficial thing when you can head somewhere that's more interesting? Oh my god, yes. I mean, like I'm a genre girl, so like I like the romance, the horror, the comedy, the film noir, all of it. Like I give it to me, it's delicious. But in particular, like coming into that first season, you're reading the novel, and the novel is written in like 1872. So there's all these sort of things that Sheridan Le Fanu was like, and then this sinister thing happened. Like there's a picture, and the picture looks just like Carmilla. Ooh. And for a modern reader, you're just like, yeah, she's a vampire. She's a vampire. Vampire, 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 vampire.
And that was Laugh saying
and that was actually Laugh saying that. So there were so many pieces of that I just wanted to send up whenever possible. And yeah, my favorite, I think, is La Fontaine being like, yeah, she's a vampire, but we've known she's a vampire since the blood in the cereal bowl, because the audience had too, right? Vampire, 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 right? That was I had been waiting to write that from like the first episode. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of other ones that were really,
there's
really
so many.
important. Yeah, I know.
In terms of subverting tropes, and also some of them that are really fun that you embrace, right?
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to steer into the trope first before you can reverse out of it, because sometimes if you don't name a thing, it's very difficult. Like, essentially, you're just kind of like in a bland featureless
You can't subvert
territory.
anything that you haven't established.
Like, Buffy is
Right.
awesome because Buffy is the idiot blonde girl walking into the dangerous alley. We're in that trope until suddenly she pops somebody in the face. And I think that's one of the things that I like is tropes give you really nice handles on what things have meant, which allows you to kind of like pop for where it might mean something different. Yeah.
And a lot of thematic resonance as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we exist, like especially women in media exist in tropes, right?
We love TV tropes.
And we cannot. Oh, yes. So much of the writing process of this is me being like, how did I just lose 6 hours on TV tropes? I mean, it's interesting, but I should probably write a thing.
Yeah, because tropes aren't inherently bad, it's all in the execution, right? Except ones that we don't want to see.
But it's the awareness of them, it's the
Yes.
commentary on them, it's the way that the lens of the piece is regarding them
Absolutely.
and taking them. Yeah.
And subverting them or just leaving them at either on a meta level or in the show itself.
Well, yeah, to a certain extent, there's an I guess like a limit to how much explicit content is going to happen. I mean, for me, I would say I am neither like in terms of like the sex. I'm sex positive theoretically, and for myself, like I tend to be somewhere in the middle in terms of like how much I want to see. Because you really feel like they're your characters, but you also sometimes want to let them have a little bit of privacy to themselves.
I think that POV definitely influences that, and the fact that we're playing in a corporate world with a very specific tone.
Okay.
So we wouldn't all of a sudden switch to coverage and we're in a bedroom and there's like this close-ups and this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and also to a certain extent for me, it's also about where the storytelling point ends. And so frequently, like by the time they're kissing, or perhaps more than kissing, the narrative point has ended itself. And so from that is I think also where like the instinct. Generally, I find if I have to write a sex scene, it's because the sex is really bad. If the sex is good, the story is over. Like, yay, the sex was good. But if the sex is bad, well, then we have to stick around for that because the story is continuing. So really, honestly, you want us to cut away.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because we started and then it's like cut to Laura being like, uh-oh.
Yeah. You want to leave the glory of it to your imagination.
I will tell you though, on set we called it because we had to kind of make her hair bigger and bigger for those moments. You've all seen it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like her hair gets bigger, and we called it like 90s sex hair.
Oh, nice.
So we're like 90s sex hair, but like times 10 compared to last time. So then makeup was just like teasing it.
I'm trying to think what the stage direction
On
for
the
that
walkies.
was.
90s sex hair, flying in, 90s sex hair. Yeah.
That's awesome.